This has been a long time coming video and a very fun one. This here is the Acer Predator Helios Neo. This is the Neo S right here. I picked these up both open box, and I've had so many people on Reddit, on Discord, and on YouTube ask me like, okay, you need to review these and soon. I took my time with them, unfortunately, sorry. I took like a month, to be honest, because it's been a long time since I did an Acer gaming laptop, like a super long time. And I haven't used either of these. And the reviews when they first came out were kind of like negative, which is weird. Because I looked at the specs on paper and I was like, man, these seem like really good laptops. And then I bought them and I was like, why is everyone complaining? These are like really nice laptops. So this is the non-S1. It's slightly less S, meaning less slim. That's the the S moniker. Despite that, it's still pretty slim and very premium. So this one here is a full bore beast laptop, 275 HX CPU, awesome CPU, loads of power, still offers things like good battery life in that there. Then it has a 5070 Ti full wattage, very powerful, and it's a premium nice laptop, right? A little bit more gamery, not quite as discreet as the other one, but very good. Then I also brought in the S version. Otherwise, they're basically the same. Slimmer, S for slim. So it's a slimmer laptop. It looks pretty similar. It has the same specs on paper. So it has the 5070 Ti and it has the 275HX, but it's much slimmer, much slimmer laptop. So what they do to allow it to not explode, they just lower the watts. So the same components, 5070 Ti, 275HX. This one here runs at a lower wattage though. A little bit different outside of that. But one of the things that I've had a lot of people complain about is the battery life on these laptops, the thermals, the performance, and the premium. We'll jump into the review right here, but let me tell you, these laptops massively exceeded my expectations. Now there will be some footage that I can maybe pillage from another video overlap. So I have like the internal videos, which I'm comparing to a ton of different laptops. I'm going to steal some of that. You've probably already seen that, and that's going to be compared from a different video. I also have the footage where I'm comparing all the different 5070 Ti laptops. Some of that footage will be, co-opted and used in here. And in that one, I do compare, screens and speakers and that kind of stuff. So that some of the stuff I'm just going to literally co-op from that video there to compare, because it's interesting to see the other laptops as well. But these will still be, this is still dedicated video and it's its own thing. So let's go into just the Acers here. We don't have anything else on the plate here. We're just talking about the Acers. What do I think about, the internals and the looks and that? They're very nice. It's been a long time since I've used an Acer laptop, a gaming laptop. I've used many non-gaming laptops, and they're way more premium than I remembered. It's been a long time. Like I'm talking over 5 years probably since I used the Acer gaming laptop, and they are way better than I remembered. Premium feeling chassis, no corners cut. They feel quite nice. The internals we've already seen are very impressive. I mean, it doesn't have vapor chamber cooling or anything like that, but they still perform very well. The design and the build quality is good. Like they feel premium, right? Like these screens, the hinges even feel nice. Like these are not bad hinges or anything like that. The keyboards are quite nice. Like we can come in here, we can do a quick type, just a real quick type here, right? Do a real quick type. I didn't know what to expect for the keyboard because it's been forever. I've already done a little bit here, but yeah, and again, a spoiler, I've been using these laptops for several weeks now, both of them. Like I keep just messing around, going back between them. We have the non-S, the Acer Predator Helios non-S, as a non-slim. Still reasonable. I mean, it's not a thick boy, but it's also not a thin boy. It's just a standard gaming laptop thickness. Very nice. Very gamer vibe to it, but not like ridiculous. The S1 looks quite similar, but it's just toned down. And then of course it's thinner. Quite a bit thinner. So we'll bring them up here, have a look at the thinness, the thickness, all this kind of stuff. So thickness, it is quite noticeable on camera. It actually doesn't show up as well on camera. It never does. But the S is a fair bit thinner. The actual screen, like material is thinner. The little bum back here is thinner. And the chassis itself is quite a bit thinner. So it is thinner, right? But it does actually have the same ports. Like the ports there, so you get RJ45 on both. USB-A on both. Micro SD card is lovely to see on both. Headphone, microphone combo jack. Vents out the back. The annoying ports are on the back. So power, barrel plug power is out the back. So that's not in the way. HDMI is at the back, not in the way. Ethernet, I would like to be out the back, but it doesn't really matter. You do get 2 USB-C. Right side, you get 2 more USB-A on the right. So lots of ports there. I would like to see them move one of the USB-C from the back to the side, because all the USB-C is in the back. So if you ever want to plug in a USB-C type thing, you have to reach behind the laptop. That is actually annoying. It's not a deal breaker by any means at all, but it is kind of annoying. I'd rather have ports in the back here than have HDMI and power out the side, to be quite honest. So it still benefits over some laptops, like the new Legions don't do that anymore. But I'd like to see, like, we have the power one out the back, because these USB-Cs do support power delivery. And you can power the laptop very well off of them, but why not put one of the, the Thunderbolt 4, put them on the side. That'd be nice. But a little bit more gamery on the, the non-S. You can see, little plastic things, a little bit less gamery on the S, right? That see-through kind of glass, it's acrylic, but little glass panel type thing, that's more muted there, right? Otherwise, I mean, they're pretty similar, right? Metal lid on both. One of the differences, the non-S has a plastic bottom. The S has a metal bottom, slimmer. Inside, they are exactly the same, laptops inside, although thinner heat pipes on this, thicker heat pipes on this. Otherwise, they're basically the same. So a little bit better cooling on the thicker one because it allows more watts. This has a full wattage setup. This does not. In terms of the hand feel, like they both feel rigid, rigid, and they're not going to be bendy, creaky, or anything like that. They're surprisingly firm. I mean, they're premium laptops, so you'd hope so. But they don't have like a lot of creak or anything like that. They do get fingerprints on the top, but it is smooth, so it is easy to clean them off. Inside here, we have a glossy and a non-glossy, so that's something to be aware of. Very different in terms of that technology there, right? The actual keyboards on that are functionally the same, right? Looks clean inside. It may look dark, but it's actually like a blue. This is like an off blue type of color with a little bit of metallic sparkle. This is a off gray, so a little bit darker here. So this is a little bit more gray. This is a little more blue. I like both. I prefer the blue because it's even more resilient to fingerprints, but this is still somewhat resilient to fingerprints. But you can see a nice sleek look to them, right? Obviously much more glossy. You can see that there on the OLED because it's reflective OLED. This is a high quality IPS. That's a high quality OLED. Your choice. But both very, very, very sleek laptops. It's been a very long time since I had messed around with the Predator. Very long time. So it's nice and refreshing to get back to them and actually play with them, see what they're like. And they're both quite nice. Weight. So the non-S here, 2,500 grams approximately. This is lighter. It's not as light as you might think, because it does have some extra metal and stuff, right, that keeps the weight up, but 300 grams lighter, right, 320 grams lighter. It's a fair bit. Now the power bricks are considerably different. Let's bring them in over here. So the slim one, all tangled, the slim one here is much smaller. You can see that there. It's 230 watts on the slim one. And that makes sense because it's a lower wattage system. They have the same exact specifications on paper. They're identical laptops in terms of what the components inside, but they have considerably different amounts of like the power that can be allocated to them. And so the big one has a 330 watt. I've had a few people ask me and be like, does the laptop, the big one specifically, discharge when it's, you're on max power and gaming? Well, no, it's a 330 watt power brick, right? So the GPU can pull like 130, 150, and the CPU, I mean, it's not going to be sitting at 250 watts all the time. It's impossible, right? You wouldn't even be able to cool that. So you're not going to be discharging this laptop while it's plugged in, even under full mode, right? It's a high wattage system, high wattage power supply. But you're going to have the same thing with this here. This one, if you used this charger on the big laptop, yes, it wouldn't be able to keep up because the big laptop has a higher wattage overhead. But this one here is designed for the thin, the S, which doesn't supply as many watts to the system. You'll see that when we get to that point. So yes, they both have power supplies that are reasonable. The big one does have a fairly big power supply. The S here, the non-S here. It's a pretty big power supply, to be quite honest. But fortunately, they both do take USB-C. Now, you're not going to be ripping, turbo mode gaming under USB-C, but they actually do both perform. I like that you can just plug it into the barrel plug. It's nice. They do both perform well on USB-C. So you're not going to, have like terrible performance where, you can't do anything and the system becomes nerfed. I've had a few laptops recently that start to become weird on USB-C. They don't perform as you'd anticipate, and I don't have that issue here. These ones here, when you plug in the barrel plug, of course you do unlock the extra modes, but when you are on USB-C charging, it does still work very well without any weird behaviors. But the keyboards here are really nice. Let's give a quick type here. And over here. I'm reaching really awkwardly around my camera. Yeah, so they're both really nice keyboards. Better than anticipated in both cases. The non-S here has a larger, like the actual physical keycaps are a little bit like taller, the Z height, and there's more travel on them. Makes sense. It's a bigger laptop. It's recessed down further, like there's a bigger lip there, which recesses them down further, which allows for more travel and larger keycaps. This has a slightly lower profile, like the physical keycap is smaller this way, and there's slightly less travel. Still lots though, so they both feel snappy. This one feels like it's snappy, nice little quick little travel there. I might actually prefer this one because it's super snappy. This is a really snappy keyboard. This one by no means is bad. Like this is still a fantastic keyboard. It's just ever so slightly less snappy, but it still feels great. If you get either of these, they don't feel like gaming laptops. Like, sometimes the gaming laptop keyboards, you start typing on them and you're like, ugh, these feel like crap. But neither of these have that issue at all. They're quite nice to type on. Now, before we get into the RGB, which I will in a second here, the trackpad, because it's up, the trackpads are quite nice. Way better than anticipated and better than some of the other ones in the class. These are really nice trackpads. Smooth. This is a smooth texture. This is a smooth texture. Not glass, not acrylic, but smooth. Click is nice. This one over here, same smoothness. It's a slightly different click. Oops, I opened up a program. Slightly different click over here. I probably prefer this. This is one of the better trackpads until you get into stuff that's like glass trackpads and some super premium ones. This one is probably the best, but this is also very nice. As you can see here, I have all these programs. I've been using these laptops a lot, actually. Like, I'm not just saying that. I've been using them a lot. I've been doing video editing on them because I was just super curious about these Predators. So this is actually going to one of my followers now. They're going to take it off my hands. I was very, very, very close to keeping one of these as my permanent daily driver. But the problem with me is that when I do that, then I end up kind of getting complacent and I stop reviewing stuff as much because I'm like, oh, whatever, I got a laptop. And I kind of keep, a lot of times I just use the laptops as I'm reviewing them. That's kind of the thing that I do nowadays. I have a daily driver one, but a lot of the time I do kind of keep using the ones that I'm testing. And I really liked both of these. We'll put it that way. So it was very tough for me to be like, oh, man. So this is going to somebody and this is going to somebody. So we also have the Acer Predator software. So come in here. Come in here. And we have our Predator. This is like weird. It's so 2000s. In a way, I like it. It's so 2000s, this dumb thing here. The lighting stuff is quite good. You turn that off. The lighting stuff is quite good. These are zonal keyboards. You can see this one has some zones. One, which I didn't fully finish it, but you can go global. So the whole thing is one color, or the whole thing is one, like ripple effect type thing. Right, different modes here. Do that kind of stuff, or you can set it up by areas like that. Now these are zonal type keyboards, right? So you have zone 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have a 4-zone setup. So we can go like that. We can make that. What do we have? Red, blue, green. I hope if I actually clicked it. 4 can be, I don't know, back to pink or like that. So you have 1, 2, 3 zones, or you can set them up as being area, the whole thing, right? So global will be like whatever you apply, it'll apply to the whole thing. Set it up how you want, or you can go with zonals, and they're pretty good. They're bright. That's the one thing. Like, it's not per key RGB, but it's bright. Like, I have a light on here. When those are off, like, they're pretty bright, to be honest. This is an annoying one. Let's go static. So we'll make one static. We'll make one like that, and you can set them up how you want. But they are very bright. From the top, of course, you can't see as much. You can see them shining through the keys is nice. You can set the timeout as well as you want. But you can see they're quite bright RGB. So be aware you have access to that, and if you like RGB, I don't really care, but if you like it, then great, it's fantastic. Cover like that there, right? Those there. I'm fine with that color, whatever. Area lighting control, and then some advanced settings. I don't know what these actually do. It's just for the audio, right? Just leave it as music. You can tune that kind of stuff. So very good. And then there's update stuff over here. So you will want to do updates, like you can do BIOS updates and other kind of updates over here. Some of your updates you're going to want to do through Windows, right? Like Windows software, but you're going to want to do hardware level updates through Acer. So you can get it off their website. You can go to their website, get the BIOS updates. These both had BIOS updates, which are important to do. And then of course you can get them, some updates from here. You don't want to get hardware level updates from Windows. That's a really bad idea. You want to get them from the manufacturer. Like, you can get NVIDIA drivers from NVIDIA, You can get Intel drivers from Intel, and then you can get your other drivers, like hardware level drivers. Typically, I get them from Acer themselves. Very important to do that. So you can come in here and you have your performance modes. So you come in here, scenario, quiet, balance, performance, turbo. I'll show you how they work, but they're very good. Honestly, they're very good. Turbo is going to be louder and hotter, but you're going to get max performance. When you go down to performance and you go all the way down to quiet, you decrease the wattages. You also decrease the noise and thermals. But they're all quite performant. Even quiet mode performs very well. So that's good to see there. You love to see that. The other option you have in here is you can go with over here. Right, so you can pick whichever one you want. Most of the time when I'm just hanging out, I'm in balanced or quiet because the fans turn off. In these two modes here, balanced and quiet, the fans are generally off most of the time. Or if they're on, you can't hear them. Unless you're doing like heavy stuff, like video editing or something, or you're like, I don't know, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. The fans turn right off, which is lovely to hear that, the fans not being annoying in the background. So I do that. Under this next mode over here, you have even more modes. So you can go in here and you can do your GPU. So dedicated only, which will give you slightly more performance because you get less latency. So you can do that. You have Optimus and automatic. Most of the time you're going to leave it automatic. It'll sleep the GPU when you're not using it. And then when you start using the GPU, it'll wake it up, which will obviously burn more battery. But if you need it, then you need it. You have different charging modes in that. You can have it so it doesn't fully charge up. So if you're plugged in all the time, for example, you want to put it on this like battery saver type thing here. 80%. It's just better if you're plugged in all the time, right? Power off, the USB charger for charging other things, very good. All kinds of other stuff, LCD overdrive. They're a little different because this is an OLED, this is an IPS, so you get slightly different modes in here for the screens, right? Some transparency effects and stuff, some protective stuff there. Go down there. We do this very annoying boot up sound where the laptops are like, it's really loud. When you turn off the laptop, you turn it back on. So I would recommend turning that off because it's super loud. If you're like stealth gaming and like you're trying to be sneaky about it, you turn your laptop and it's like, well, now everyone in my household is awake. So you want to turn that off. So here we have the two Acer Predator Neo S and non-S. So on the left here, we have the, which one's which now? On the left here, we have the non-S. On this side here, we have the S. Is that right? Yeah. Non-S here, S here. Very good. So they're essentially the same general laptop. S is going to be slimmer, S for slim. Non-S just doesn't even have that. But you can see inside they look pretty good. You have dual upgradable RAM on both of them. This one here I was taking out just to play around with it. But this here, we get C-SODIMM memory here. C-SODIMM, not normal SODIMM, so it runs faster, 6400 megatransfers rather than 56 or 48. This also uses C-SODIMM, so you get faster memory on both of them. It's upgradable. It will accept slower memory as well, but both of them do accept C-SODIMM, so that's really nice to see. Very, very nice. Both of them do have dual NVMe, so one NVMe here, one NVMe here with a little bit of a thermal thing on it. It's not metal, it's just a little, I don't know, interface type thing. Second NVMe over here, second NVMe over here. So both of them then also have upgradable. So you're going to be getting dual upgradable Wi-Fi, or dual upgradable RAM, dual upgradable NVMe, upgradable Wi-Fi on both of them. That's also fantastic. Battery are slightly different between them. This one here, the Slim, has a 74 watt-hour battery, which is reasonable for such a slim laptop. Weirdly, it's just like loose in there. I don't know, they don't screw them down. Same with the big one. It's just a loose battery. It's weird. You don't notice it when it's closed, but it's strange. This one here does have a slightly larger battery, 88 watt-hour. So you get a little bit more battery life out of it, just regardless. Speakers look to be exactly the same. They're just slightly oriented different, not any different there. The actual fans appear to be like physically more or less the exact same fan. I don't see any real size difference on them. The Z height on them is slightly different though. This has a slightly larger casing here. So the Z height up this way is slightly larger here. So you get a little bit more potential chamber there to move some more air. This one here is actually slightly lower. So there might be a slightly different height to the fan. The diameter is the same. So in theory, this one will move a little bit more air, generally speaking, which makes sense. It's a higher wattage component part there. So that's interesting. Then we have over here 3 heat pipes. 3 heat pipes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. They're basically the same. These appear to be slightly thicker heat pipes though. So the heat pipe here is thicker, even though you have the same number than this here. Again, wattage differences there. Same VRM coverage over here, and they have the same auxiliary there. So they both look actually fantastic inside for what they are. Very upgradable, and the cooling looks good. I would like to see a vapor chamber. Some laptops put vapor chambers at 5070 Ti. Some of them put it on the higher ones. But there is a lot of like fan in here as well, and decent amount of heat pipe coverage. I mean, I'm always going to ask for more, but I have already tested this and it runs reasonably well, all things considered. This is, again, a full wattage. So the 5070 Ti here can pull in like an extra 40 watts. And when the CPU is going, they can both do the same. But when the CPU and the GPU are going, the non-slim one here can pull more for both, not just the GPU. The GPU will pull more and the CPU will pull more because they're allocating more wattages because it can cool better. This one here is definitely a lower wattage offering. You know, you're going to be getting around 100 watts on the GPU here, and the CPU potentially can't pull as much when the GPU is being loaded. But again, it's a slimmer laptop, so it's designed to be like that. The CPU and the GPU both do scale well to lower wattages, so it's not like they become bad when you lower the wattages, but just be aware that this one here, you know, it doesn't have quite as robust cooling, but it doesn't need quite as robust cooling. Now, the screens are very different on these laptops. This is an IPS screen, this is an OLED screen. Whether you like IPS or OLED is up to you. I prefer IPS, a lot of people prefer OLED, right? There's a negative and advantages to both. We'll actually use this as a background because it looks pretty good. So OLED, typically, not always, but typically are very glossy these days. So you can see that that's crazy glossy, right? Crazy glossy. Right, get that light there. On the S here, we have the glossy, very, very, very glossy. On the non-S, we do not have gloss. It's actually anti-reflective. So you really cut down on those reflections. So it really does help quite a bit with not having glare, like yourself looking back. Like I can see myself there, right? Like it's very obvious. And that can be hard on the eyes when your eyes are kind of focusing. It's not as bad when there's a lot on the screen, but when there's like static like that there, right? You do get cases where your eyes will struggle and you'll keep trying to look at the reflective stuff. So that's one of the negatives of a glossy OLED, right? IPS you can get glossy IPS as well. This is just a non-glossy IPS. You can also get non-glossy OLEDs, but nowadays it's more likely that IPS will be anti-glare. It's more likely that OLED will be glare, which is the way that it is. Other things to consider here, they both are quite bright. So the brightness is very good. So right now that's, you know, it's obviously going to look a huge advantage for the IPS because everything I've said is advantage to the IPS. You also get advantages. It's easier on the eyes. I find that you don't get PWM flicker, especially at low brightnesses. The text and like looks a little bit crisper on an IPS, generally speaking. Just the way that it is, a little easier to read. OLEDs can have text fringing. This one does not have that issue though, so I'm not going to give any negative to this one here. I don't notice any like haloing or like weird light effects around the text, so it's not a negative on this one. Some screens I have noticed that. I do not notice it on here. So really what you're competing with here is glossy versus non-glossy. Pick your poison. Potential burn-in risk, it's a lot lower these days, but it is still there versus almost no burn-in risk. It is possible, but it's very unlikely. Right, but then the other thing to consider here is the colors and that. So when you're looking at the colors and the blacks and all that kind of stuff, you may think right off the bat, well, you know, OLED has better colors because you've seen a lot of OLED screens with really good colors. And then you go into that and you're like, oh man, I always want to get an OLED because the colors are so much brighter. Well, that's not true at all. That's not remotely true. That's completely false. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but the colors are literally identical. Right? These are both 100% DCI-P3 color space screens. So the reds are going to be crazy crisp. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes glossy screens will give you a little bit more vibrancy. It depends on the scene. I noticed that you get a little bit more vibrancy on a glossy screen, whether it's IPS or OLED, doesn't matter. If you get a glossy IPS, it'll be slightly more vibrant than a matte IPS. If you get a glossy OLED, it'll be slightly more vibrant than a non-glossy OLED. That's just the way that it is. When you put on an anti-gloss coating, it does cause a little bit of light diffusion, which cuts down a little bit of the crispness. When you have a glossy screen, it looks more vibrant, but you get crazy reflections. So that's your choice. It has nothing to do with OPS or IPS or OLED. That's just the way that it is. Also, color space has nothing to do with IPS or OLED. People still get confused about this. It has nothing to do with it, right? OLED means absolute blacks. Right? The pixels turn off. It's a different pixel technology. The pixels turn off when it's fully black. IPS can't do that. Even when it's a black scene, they can't turn off. But the colors will be the same. These look exactly the same to me. I can't tell the difference. Literally exactly. They're really good screens. Maybe slightly more vibrancy because it's a glossy screen. Now here is where they separate out. Let's bring that up here. It's so reflective, it's hard to show. Let's turn off this light here because it's going to kind of kill it. That's the negative of the gloss too, right? But you also then have better blacks, right? It's not so noticeable when the lights were on. You notice how I had to turn off the lights to really make this? I probably see about that, right? So these pixels are off. That's why it's like a mirror, right? So when you turn off all the lights on you and you're playing or watching a show in the dark, it's really quite nice because the blacks are off. So you get a ton of depth there. The colors will then pop more by contrast. Here, because I turned off all the lights, it's very noticeable that this is an IPS screen. Those pixels are not off. So there's a little bit of color coming out. And so it almost appears dark right side by side. The rest of it doesn't. You can't tell the difference. But that's, you know, a big advantage for OLED. In dark, especially in dark, it can really be quite nice because you get that. Now you do have to deal with reflections, but you don't typically have giant areas of black color like that, right? You'll get little bits. And to show that, where you can come into a scene like this here, right? This scene, you're not going to really be able to tell as much of a difference between them because there's less blacks here. So the OLED is not able to really dominate over here anymore, right? You might see like a little bit in here, but it's such small areas you can't really tell the difference. So one of the advantages of the OLED would be, you know, if you don't have consistently large black areas, you can't really tell that it's so reflective, but you might get further depth. There's not enough black contrast here to really tell the difference. So these look identical to me. I don't notice any difference between them. Can't tell the difference. I guess theoretically, if you were to look like up into some of these, this looks ever so slightly like deep, I guess I'd say. Is that the right term? Like this black, it's still very black by contrast to all this bright stuff, but you can kind of see. You look out there and you're like, yeah, whatever. Here, that just looks a little bit more rich, like it pulls you in because those blacks are off there. So it's just a little bit more vibrant. That's the one area you'll kind of notice. It's not that easy to see when you have fully bright scenes though, right? So they're both incredible screens. My preference is the IPS because I will gladly sacrifice the little bit of, you know, absolute blacks, especially because I don't typically have full black swaths. It's like this kind of stuff. So I'll sacrifice, you know, that. I'm not pixel hunting to lose the glare of the OLED and to not have to worry about any burn-in risk. I don't have to hide my tasks bar. I just leave it. I'm fine with it, right? But some people won't agree with me. Some people will want the OLED because they want the absolute blacks. It's something they care about. So it's not, I can't tell you the right answer. For me, doing hybrid type work, professional work, and also gaming and that kind of stuff, right? Gaming is better, looks better on OLED in most cases, kind of. Not the colors, but like the extra blacks can help in some cases. But I do so much professional and like video editing type work, I'm gonna always take the IPS as long as it's a good IPS. I'm not gonna take some crappy IPS any day of the week, but this is a very nice one. So awesome. It's tough because they're both really nice screens. It's just going to depend on your preference. Now there is one quirk here though, and this is something that's very important for me to point out here because it will affect battery. When you come in here and you go to display, they have the same on paper specifications, 160 hertz refresh rate. It's very nice. 1600p for there. And then they have the same peak refresh rate of 240 hertz, which is great, right? Very, very high refresh. That's awesome. But this one can do 60 hertz, this one cannot. And I think that is a mistake by Acer. I don't know why they did that. This laptop does not lock itself to 240 hertz. You can put it to 60 hertz, which helps battery life because refresh rate does affect battery. It's not going to like half your battery life, but it will give a noticeable bump to jump down to 60 hertz. Over here, you're locked at 240 hertz. You can't do anything about that. So you will always have to worry about, you know, potentially that impact on battery life. The weird thing is it would make more sense if they were flipped because this is the bigger one, which is more likely that you're going to be using it, you know, as a true gaming laptop. It's still pretty hybridized, but this is like a hybrid laptop. It is still a gaming laptop as well, but it's more of a hybrid gaming laptop. Like I would say for something like the Asus Zephyrus G16 and the G14. I don't call those pure gaming laptops. They're more gaming hybrids. People get pissed when I say that, but it's true. Why do I say that? Because this one focuses on better cooling, better performance, better, that regards, even at the expense of portability and some of the premium stuff. Like it has a plastic bottom, this is a metal bottom. This one here is focused on being in the middle. So you don't get, you know, the absolute premium MacBook-like experience that you're going to get out of like a Yoga 9i Pro or something from Lenovo. But what you are going to be getting is that hybrid focus where it's very sleek, portable, slim. You need something you're going to be taking on the go, has that premium kind of almost professional vibe to it. They tone down some of the gaming aesthetics on it. They focus on making it slimmer. They focus on all that kind of stuff. As a result, you actually compromise performance, right? This has a higher wattage overhead than this does. This has better performance than this with the same settings, but this is a thinner, more portable laptop. So it's weird that then the battery life is the one that's going to be potentially impacted on the one that is probably more focused on being portable. So a little bit weird there. We'll see how that affects battery, but I do want to bring that up because it's an important difference between the two of them. They're both really nice laptops, but that's something to be aware of when it comes to that setting there. So let's continue on. The Omen sounds better. Neither of them are like ground altering, ground breaking, but the Omen does sound better. This is the non-S. This one's the loudest so far. Okay. Hard to tell if that's better than the Omen, or better than the Legion. They're kind of in the same idea. Let's go with this one. Now the slim one. This one's the loudest by far. Okay, it's done. So the Omen's the best. It's well ahead, I would say. It's definitely the best. It's a little bit more rich in the low end. It just sounds a little bit more voluminous. If we had some other comparative ones, like a G16 Zephyrus would be the best of all of them by far, like miles ahead. The Legion 7 Pro, like Pro 7, would be better than this as well. This would be one tier below that. Still good. This is the best of these for sure. After that, I'm not too sure. I think probably the Acer non-S. It sounds a little bit more rich than the Legion. The Legion is okay. I've said that before. It's like passable, it's serviceable. It's fine. This is slightly better than that. So I'd say it's like, yeah, it's good. For a gaming laptop, it's fine. I don't really like the sound of this. It's very loud, but it kind of hurts my ears. So the high end is a little untuned here. It's a little bit too high. And then as a result, the bass is a little bit low. I suspect if you brought in some tuning, you could do a little bit with the Neo. But the audio is, in my opinion, the audio is the best on the Omen over there. Okay, now here comes the most funnest part of the video for me, and that's the differences in things like performance. We've already talked about, what makes the S better, I guess. More premium, more slim, more that, more this. But the non-S is going to be able to start, taking some of that cred back because it's a more performant laptop. So they all have the same performance modes. I've already done some like shorts. I definitely did some shorts. I can't remember if I did a video. Did I do a video? I definitely did a short though. And I showed the performance modes and I showed the differences here. So we're going to we'll go in the reverse actually. We'll start with quiet and we'll work our way up to turbo. I don't know if you can hear that, but they're very quiet. Right? They're very, very quiet laptops on quiet mode. Balanced, you can sometimes hear them fans turn on and off, but not that much. When you go up here, the fans will turn on from time to time doing stuff. So just be aware of that. These are wattages. So lowest wattage, highest wattage. Weakest performance, highest performance. Quietest, loudest. Coolest, hottest. So it's pretty straightforward there. But let's actually show it. So we'll just do CPU to start with here. Then we'll do some gaming. People are curious how these things perform. I'll probably do quite a bit of gaming after this. So I'm going to have dedicated game testing on this, dedicated game testing on this for their own videos. I'll have a Helios non-S game testing video and a Helios S game testing video. So watch those. If you're curious, you watch this video here. I will have gaming at the end of this video, of course, comparative video, comparative gaming, but they'll have their own dedicated gaming because not everybody cares about this one or cares about this one. They want one or the other. So we'll give them their own videos. But this is the comparative side of it. So we're going to start with the CPU here. Check the idles. They're both basically the same. 5055, same CPU, 275HX, really good CPU, obviously. It's an excellent CPU. No problems with that. It's excellent. as long as you can tame them under full load, but they're also very efficient. So we'll start here. Performance, silent mode, see how the performance is here. That fan turned on right away. That one hasn't yet. They won't necessarily like scale across the thing because like maybe this one has a better silent mode than this one does. I don't know. Wattage here, this is warmer. This is already at 96. This is at 91. So this gets hotter faster. 100 watts, 114 watts. And now this is slightly higher still. Now it dropped down. Okay. So what's the static here? 55. Weird. They have such different modes. It's just strange how these things work, right? This one had a bigger burst on the first bit there, but now it's actually going slower. That's so weird. I just like weird stuff. So it's technically faster by 1,000 points, but then the wattage went from 100 down to 50. This one went down later. It has dropped down, but it took an extra second or two. So it had a moment of more boost. That's weird. Now they're more or less the same, 55 watts-ish on both of them. 70, 75, 77, 63. This is slightly cooler. It's a thicker laptop with thicker heat pipes. They're both very quiet though. It'll be hard to separate the noise, but we'll go like that maybe. 38. That's very quiet. Let's see. So what am I seeing here? These are very, very quiet laptops under their quiet modes. But despite that, they are very performant. That's one of the nice things about this 275HX chip. It's, even if you drop the watts down like a lot, it's still tearing up the performance here. Like 27,000, that's crazy. That's crazy for that many watts. I have a 285H laptop, and under its absolute max performance, the max that it can do, it's like 22,000. This beats it at like half the watts or less than half the watts. So these Arrow Lake HX chips are just so much better for Intel. Like Intel was just hot garbage with 13 and 14 gen. I'd always tell people, I'm like, why are you buying these Intel laptops? You're crazy. Now it's the opposite. These Intel laptops are so effing good. Generally speaking, at baseline, Intel is now superior to AMD in mobile chips, just the way that it is. This is last gen. Now we're in 2026, and now we have Panther Lake and stuff coming. But the nice thing about that is these HX chips are not invalidated. Panther Lake is still like lower wattage, so it has like iGPU and that kind of stuff. These HX chips are still very relevant. So if you're looking at it, you're like, why don't want to buy the old stuff now? That doesn't matter. These HX chips are still very, 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 very relevant for 2026 and years onwards. So don't worry about that. Like new stuff coming up for 2026, these are not going to be invalidated. They're fantastic. So now we're on the balanced mode. It's still very quiet. Nothing has got noisy yet. Wattages are higher, right? This peak is peaking at 160. This is peaking at 125. We'll see what it drops down to. But again, more watts here. Boom. It'll have higher performance. It's finishing faster. 34, 29. I still don't consider this loud though. This is more audible than this. I can hear this more, and it's a slightly higher pitch than this over here. This one I can barely hear. Which makes sense. I mean, it is running at higher watts, but it's better cooling, right? So let's stop that again. And we'll come back. And now what we'll do is we'll go up one more to performance mode. We have to give it a sec here because now we're getting to the point where I need to let that CPU boost recover. So we'll give it a sec. Okay, we'll come back. Hopefully that CPU boost has kind of come back. So now we're one tier down below the top. The fans are going on both now. This one much more audible than this, just hanging out. Again, you don't, unless you are doing something like this, you don't need these performance modes to be up because as you saw how performant these things are under, like the silent modes and that for day-to-day stuff, the silent mode on this beats the performance mode on my laptop. And my laptop is also an Arrow Lake. It's just an H processor. So let that be a lesson to you how powerful these HX processors are. Okay, that was pretty fast over here. 36,000. This one went up a lot there. 33. So now they're closer to one another. This is starting to get a little hot. So is this though, but this is managing the heat a little bit better. Ever so slightly better. They're both hot, 105, but this is just seeming to do slightly better with that. It's also higher watts. So here we're at 127, even up to 150. Over here, it's quite a bit lower. Right, we're sitting at 66 once that kind of boost ran out, because now it's just getting too hot, 77. Now we drop down here. So this one tier down from the max, the sustained here is quite a bit higher now. So we're actually separating now. When we were in silent, they were pretty close, and now we're starting to separate out where this, we're way higher in the wattages sustained, like over 100, to put it that way. And over here, we're not beating really over 75 much. So now the performance is going to drop, right? This one stayed up, and it's continuing to stay up. This one did a first run, huge burst, very, very fast burst, 33,000, but now it's coming down because it can't sustain those high wattages with the cooling solution. 100 versus 75. Both very good, but just be aware that's how that works, right? More cooling, more wattage allocation, it's going to be able to sustain those performance thresholds higher for longer. Okay, one more run here. We'll do the highest performance mode. I suspect there'll be further separation here, but we'll see. See, the extra thermal mass here means that it doesn't heat up as fast, and the fans take longer to spin up, for example. This one heats up faster because there's less thermal mass. So then it's going to throttle faster, which allows this one to really pull ahead. So that first run, 36,000. This should be like 33 or 34 again. Yeah, about the same. They both have high watts, 155, 125, both good. I suspect this one is going to sustain this better. They're both pretty loud now, though, so it doesn't really matter which one you look at. They're both pretty loud. It's like generally 60. They're loud, as to be expected under full load. Wattages are dropping down here now, 90-ish. We're still rocking the high boost there, 161. So this one's still kicking that high performance. This one started to drop down now even more. So we went from 33 down to 30, right? This one's still rocking over 100 watts. Look at that. This one's back to that. Like that. It seems like that's the best it can do, sustained. Like 85 now is the best it's going to get on the performance, maybe 90. So it kind of just goes up by a little bit by a little bit. So 55, 65, 75, 85 seems to be roughly what this does for each mode for sustained CPU, which is still good. I mean, you're still getting over 30,000 here. And even under the lowest mode, it was still into like, what was it, 26, 27 off the top of my head, something like that. This one here, though, can just maintain. Like, it just can do it. Right? Indefinitely, it seems like. So if you need the peak performance, of course, the non-S has that peak performance benefit. That's where it's going to start pulling ahead in its peak performance. So now let's do some gaming. We'll do some comparisons here. Remember, I will have dedicated game videos for both of these laptops, so you can certainly watch those if you care. I'm just going to do Spider-Man here because it's easy to get the exact same scene. It loads into both of them. So here we are in the maximum performance mode on both of them. They're both loud. This one has a higher pitched noise than this. This one has a lower pitched noise. So this one's more of a, if you care, it is slightly noisier. The max performance here, they're the same settings, very high with balanced DLSS. It doesn't really matter, but you can see here 135, 117. So you're getting 20 extra frames on the non-S. The reason for that is it's higher watts, right? So 100 watts on the GPU here, 130 to 135 watts. So about 30 watts more here. This is about 30% more wattages, which these GPUs do kind of go up like this, and they do sort of level off, but they don't just go right across. They will continue to increase after a while. So more watts here will increase the performance, right? Looks like some of they have a little bit of like AI type stuff, and it looks like some of that's settled in here a little bit. Right now we're not quite as high, but we're still, 20% higher, which makes sense, right? 20 frames more, 18 to 20 frames more, so 15 to 20% more performance. Not like GPU tier. It's not like you went from a 5070 to a 5070 Ti, nothing like that. This will still be a 5070, especially in the average, more VRAM, all that kind of stuff. In both cases, we're over 8 gigabytes of VRAM, 8.8, 8.8. So the 5070, 5060, 5050 would be choking on VRAM. CPU here, 61, CPU here, 30. So we have two things going on here. We have more allocation of watts to the CPU, more allocation of watts to the GPU for both cases. This is not the heaviest GPU game. That's one of the reasons that I picked this. But you can see here that there's just more watts allowed here. Right here we're at almost 200 watts combined. Here we're at like 130 watts combined, right? So there's a big difference there in how much it's going to be allocated. And despite that, this is running cooler. So the 5070 Ti is 75 degrees, 85 degrees over here. The GPU here, 86 degrees, the GPU is 79 degrees. Now, I'm not going to complain about that too much because, again, this is not like a true gaming laptop per se in terms of like, it's focused as much on performance. This is a pure gaming laptop. It's still relatively thin and sleek and all that, but it's focused on performance, thermals, cooling, all that kind of stuff, as you can see here, right? Both of these are running very well. This one here, it's focused on a balance between portability, sleekness, discreteness, and also gaming. Kind of like, there's a certain segment of laptops. There's like the G16 from Asus. Those are, hybrid style laptops. I use a Lenovo Yoga 9i Pro right now, which is still kind of hybrid, but this is a hybrid gaming laptop. The Yoga 9i Pro is a hybrid creator laptop. They can both do creative tasks. They can both game. They're both portable, but it depends where on the spectrum they are. This one is leaning a little bit more towards gaming. Mine's leaning a little bit more towards creators, but both good. This is a gaming laptop over to the gaming side, and that makes sense, right? So you're going to get good performance. Again, I'm not going to test a bunch of games in this video because this is more of a comparative review. I'll have more games in the future in other videos, probably coming right after these. Okay, and here's some external thermals of the two laptops. Non-S. We're in the turbo mode. Exact same area as before. Just checking some surface temperatures. So this is all pretty good. Hottest area around here, 50-ish. But there's nothing going on to the screen based on the screen design, which is nice. Right? It's not blasting the screen. So that OLED is not getting any heat off of the cooling system. That's lovely to see. The physical keys are cool. Well, not cool. They're slightly above skin temperature, but they're not hot. If you come in here, yeah, 36, 37 or so. Let's check these ones. Maybe a touch warmer, but where your hand is, it's not really hot. If you're gaming over here, doesn't feel bad at all. Okay, and then this one's just like straight up cool. Where the hand is, it's actually, this is below skin temperature. Right, that's 27, my skin is 31. That feels cool to me. So you actually have your hand cooling by there because there's so much airflow. A few degrees cooler. I mean, it's a thicker laptop with more cooling. That fan there is pulling more air. Makes sense, right? So pretty good, honestly, considering one is a thick laptop with high watts, one is a thin laptop with medium watts. They're both doing a good job. I'm actually very impressed really by both of them. The thin one is running quite cool for the size of it. It's such a thin little thing. And the big one is running with those very high watts, are running cool. It's a plastic bottom, so you're not going to feel the heat really. In the vents, yeah, you'll get 60, but the actual plastic is not that hot. Like this doesn't feel hot on the skin. It's a little warm, I would say, but it's also sucking air in there pretty intensely. This one should have a hotter bottom, I think. Yeah, it's metal, so a little bit warmer there. That's cool, but a little bit warmer over here. So on the lap, this one's a little toasty in the middle there. That's a little toasty there. So you might want to get a laptop pad or something, or just raise it up. It's a little warm here, but it's so thin that the actual heat pipes and all the metal is like right there. It's right below the surface. Like you can't see on the camera, but it's right there by my finger. This one, there's actually like physical space between them. So honestly, they're running pretty cool, all things considered. Considering this one is such a thin laptop with a 5070 Ti in it and the HX processor, and this one's just a beast in general. they're pretty good. I have no complaints about the thermals here. I'm not sure which one I'll do first, but whatever. However, it is good performance. Like we're getting 115 to 130 F5 FPS in Spider-Man with very high presets. It's quite good, to be honest. We'll decrease that setting there. It's much quieter. I don't often game in turbo mode because it's so loud. And you can see here we're still allocating pretty good watts. So the GPU is still like 125 or so. So it's still very respectable. And the CPU has dropped down, but we're still at 40. And so the actual performance here has barely changed. Right? We're at about 130-ish FPS. We lost a few FPS. Here it's dropped a little bit, still not way down, but it's not as high, right? So now separation's probably about the same, interestingly, between them. But we're lower watts here. So we went 125 watts down to 90 watts. 27 versus 38, 30, 40. It does show you how efficient the 5070 Ti and the 275HX are, right? Because yes, this one's more powerful, so the peak is higher, but as we decrease each tier, this is still keeping up, right? Each tier, the 5070 Ti and the 275HX are keeping up regardless. It's just, if you're at a higher tier, you get better performance, right? So that's kind of where we're at here. This one's always going to be higher because it's a higher watts, but they're kind of going down with each other. Let's go one more here. We'll go balance now. Okay, so one more down. You can also notice that the lows are pretty good. I haven't been paying too much attention to them, but you know, they're pretty good. We're still doing reasonably well on the lows here. Like 1% lows, very high, well over 60, and even the 0.1% lows are pretty damn good, right? Not bad. Now you can see they're closing the gap a little bit here, right? Because the watts are closer. So on that side, on that balance mode here, we're at 85 versus 75, so there's only a 10 watt separation between them. And the CPUs are pretty close now too, 26 versus 33. So at the high end, the Neo non-S is able to really pull ahead. And then as you slowly decrease the wattages, this one comes down faster, right? And so you end up closer to one another. So on this balance mode now, they're actually operating pretty close to each other. This is still faster because it's more watts, but they're pretty close. This is also running hotter, right? So at each iteration that we go through here, it's still going to run hotter. It's a thinner laptop with thinner heat pipes. And now, this one is now quieter. This is still reasonably quiet, but this is quieter. A couple more dB over here. It's also the tone of it. It's just slightly higher pitched. Okay, so now we'll go down to silent here. And you'll see that interestingly, or quiet they call it, even on quiet mode, these are very performant, right? That's one of the advantages of these new Arrow Lake chips. They're very efficient for the CPU. And the NVIDIA Blackwell stuff, just like the previous generation, Ampere, is very efficient as well. But there's a pretty big drop here now. Now they split, right? Because the silent mode here, we're going down to 75 or 80, which was the balanced over here. This one's way down to like 40-ish watts. CPU 20-ish. So here combined we're at like 55 to 60 watts, which is kind of crazy, to be honest. You could like fully game on USB-C here. Here we're still up quite a bit. We're close to 100. So we have like 40% higher wattage, even 50% higher wattages on this machine over here. So now on the silent mode, it pulls ahead. 100 watts. Oh, sorry, 100 FPS. Low's still good. Low's still good over here, to be honest. It's really just affecting the average, which is interesting. But there's a big gap in performance here. Now we're looking at about a 30 to 35% performance gap. However, this is still pretty damn good, right? We're on silent mode here, running at 60 to 70 watts combined total. And look at the performance, right? Like it's really good. They're both very quiet. I can hear a little bit more noise out of this one, but they're both running really good now. The GPU is finally down a little bit cooler here because the watts are so low. The CPU is a little warmer over here, but not much. It's really good, right? I have been using these laptops quite a bit over the past few weeks, I've said several times, and I've been gaming a bit on them, and honestly, I just throw into silent mode most of the time because it's just, on both of them, it's good, right? It's very impressive. So, yeah, let's turn around here. We'll go like that. We'll go back into the performance mode one more time. Again, this is not the be-all end-all video. I'm going to have follow-up gaming testing, so I highly suggest you keep an eye out for that if you want to see lots of really demanding titles. It's just because the videos become too much if you do that otherwise all at one go. right? And in the performance mode, you can see they're separating out again. So in the top end and the low end, the non-S is ahead at the highest mode and the lowest mode. And then in those middle modes, they get closer, right? They get closer to one another. So that's interesting. And it's just due to wattages and cooling and that kind of stuff. But you can see here, I mean, we're doing well in both cases, right? These are both doing really well. Okay, I didn't, sure, okay. They're both doing really well regardless, right? Both very performant. So, I mean, pick your poison. You want the thinner laptop, a little bit sleeker, loose in performance. You want the thicker laptop, a little bit better performance, but less sleek. It's your pick. I think they're both very good. From a raw performance standpoint, obviously, the non-S is better. Okay, so do these laptops have bad battery life? I get asked that a lot. I think there were some creators when these first came out who identified some issues with it, but I assumed their assumptions were potentially not necessarily correct. It's hard to say though, what was going on with the battery life there. Basically here on the non-S one here, we have a lower refresh rate. So we have 60 hertz, 240 hertz, which will hurt battery life. How much just depends. But generally speaking, it has a lower refresh rate, IPS versus OLED, yada, yada, yada. Battery life here, we've just been hanging out for a couple minutes here, just not doing anything. But you can see here we're averaging around 13.5, and it goes down, like once Windows kind of parks down even more. So we'll get, typically with the 275HX, 60 watts, blah, whatever, to 60 hertz, I usually sit around 9 to 10 watts or so, and we're seeing around here, right? It's now sitting at about 9.5 watts, just doing nothing. Now I do have full brightness and all that, but 60 hertz refresh here, I did decide to turn it down there. This one we can't turn the refresh down. We're locked at 240. And you can see here that the wattages are slightly higher. So the average here, it's coming down, obviously because more time of it being lower, but it's a couple watts higher. And then the current is also lower, right? By, well, it keeps fluctuating, but it's about higher, about 1 watt lower, something like that. So over time, you're probably looking at a watt or two, generally speaking, with that refresh. So if you divide that out into the battery, more or less battery life. The other thing is this also just has a bigger battery, right? This has a 90 watt hour battery here. Well, that's the remaining capacity, about a 92 watt hour battery here. Here we have, slightly smaller battery, 20-ish% smaller battery here. So intrinsically, you're going to get less battery life. And then of course, you can lock this down to 60 hertz and get better, battery burn here. It's more or less sitting at about 10, just kind of bouncing up and down, but it's about 10. Averages don't mean too much because you have a peak there and it screws it up. That's how outliers work. But generally speaking, we're at, 9 to 10-ish range. And again, these are not deep-loaded systems. These have all kinds of stuff on them. Like I haven't done any optimizations here. I just don't have crap running. That's the other thing. I get rid of startup apps and that kind of stuff. This one, it's bouncing around right now. It's probably doing something, but generally speaking, a couple watts higher. So what does that translate to? If you're just idling, hanging out, not doing much, you're going to be sitting at, on this one here, this is probably actually about right, 6 to 8 hours, maybe even 10 hours, depending on what you're doing. Just idling on a 275HX system with this CPU, generally speaking, yeah, you'll get 8 to 10 hours of idling though, like doing nothing. 8 to 10 hours is very reasonable. I see that all the time. This one here, yeah, looks like you're getting, 6 or 7 hours. It makes sense, generally speaking, based on those wattages and the battery size, right? So definitely all-day battery, still reasonably all-day battery, 7 or 8 hours, depending on how long your day is. If you need the extra battery life, the bigger battery will help. But I don't think a lot of people just, sit and idle. That's not pretty common. So we'll come in here and we'll run some YouTube. That's a much more common thing that people will be doing, it like for somewhat of an endurance battery. Like, you run your battery for a very long time. Something that you might be doing is watching YouTube. That's one thing. You might be like typing and doing documents, but you can see that the wattages do jump up, right? It's up to 13, up to 15, but they come down quickly. That's the thing about these HX chips from Intel now, the Arrow Lake stuff. They used to go up and they would just stay up, and it would take forever for the CPUs to spin down. They never came down as much in the first place, but they would take forever to come down. Really, like, they would kind of just never come down nearly as much. So we'll come in here. Is there anything interesting that's like the same? 2 a.m. Oh, those are the same. Okay, so we'll come in here. Okay, let's put a little bit of volume. I just don't want to screw with my talking. Just a little bit of volume, just so it's producing sound. All right, very good. We'll change this to be, make sure this is 1080p 60, which it is 1080p 60 in both cases. And we'll just let this run for a minute essentially and just see what happens with the wattages. You can see it does jump up, right? That's now doing stuff. The CPU will spin up, but then it will come down and it will kind of rest a little bit. So, here we're buffering a video. It's, it's playing the video and it's also buffering it, that kind of stuff. And we're up a bit, we're at 14 watts. So obviously the wattage consumption is going up. Here it's up a little bit higher as well, 18. So it's not going to get as good battery life as before because you're actually doing something now, right? So now let's just come back, I don't know, in a few minutes and we'll see what we're at. Okay, we come back. It's just been, I don't know, a few more minutes. And we can see here, yeah, there's a difference in the wattages here. Obviously, when you're playing something, it might extrapolate out a little bit more, but we're at, 14-ish watts, 14.5 watts bouncing around there. And this one's, a few watts higher. So yes, regardless of what you do, because this one here has that higher refresh, and there could be some other stuff as well, it's going to burn more watts. So if you're just doing YouTube playback, you can just average that out. You'll probably get about 4-ish hours. Yeah, something like that, 4.5 hours of YouTube playback, depending on what you're doing. So it's not the best. Again, it's a gaming laptop. It's a gaming hybrid. If they put in here a 60 hertz refresh monitor, it would help a little bit too. And of course, if they had an H processor, it'd be a little better. This one here is doing better. Obviously, ooh, I lost it. Here it is. A few watts less. So you're going to get a little bit more battery life out of it, an extra 2 to 3 hours. So 4 versus 6. Part of that is, this is using slightly less watts because of that refresh thing. But the other thing is it's also just bigger battery, right? It's a very thin laptop. So there you go. So yeah, I'd say take this with you for the day. If you're doing document editing, that kind of stuff, yeah, you'll get 5 to 6 hours out of this one, probably 8 or 9 out of this one here. So that's fine, I guess, for a lot of people. And then if you're going to be doing YouTube playback, yeah, I guess, 4 hours, 6 hours, pretty straight up there, which I think for a lot of people is fine. That's you can get on a plane and take a flight and you'll be fine. And you'll be able to get through most of that flight. The other thing is they both accept USB-C anyways. So yeah, they don't have the best, but they're also gaming laptops, but they also run just fine on USB-C. I've been using both of these on USB-C quite a bit, even gaming on USB-C. So battery life is actually not bad. I've seen people say that this thing has atrocious battery life. It's unusable. I will say that that's not true. It doesn't have the best because of that, locked in at 240 hertz. Being able to put that thing down to 60 hertz would help a little bit. It would probably give you an extra 10%, maybe 15% battery. But it's fine. It's a thin and light laptop, right? So if you're comparing this to a laptop that has a 99.9 watt hour battery, like a Legion Pro 7 or something like that, obviously that has better battery life because it's also bigger, regardless of the refresh thing. Okay, so conclusions. First, I guess, let me move that back slightly. We'll talk about the differences between them, positive, negatives. We summarized all of it, so I don't want to, what is it, beat the dead horse? It's just a weird terminology. Bring that in there. Yeah, they're both fantastic. They're just very different. If you want slightly, if you want more performance, full wattage, this is the one to get. If you want something that's slimmer, more discreet, more sleek, lighter, this is the one to get. OLED screen, IPS screen, both fantastic screens. So that's another deciding factor. Do you want are you okay with the gloss, but you get yourself that beautiful OLED blacks? You're going to get this one here. You're not going to get the blacks. That's very, very good there. The other differences here, performance, right? So here you're going to get the full wattage. You're going to get the 135, 140 watts on the GPU and full watts on the CPU at the same time. This one here, you can't do them at the same time. You get pretty good watts on one or the other, but when they're both being slammed, it does drop down because it's just thinner, less watts, less power, less on the actual power cord, but it also just can't keep them cool otherwise. So obviously it's going to run a little bit cooler. I like both of them. It depends on you. For me, I really do like nice thin laptops that are hybrid laptops. I use a hybrid laptop myself over a pure gaming laptop. It's noticeably lighter in the hand. If I was still a student and I was traveling a lot for school and that, I'd probably pick up this one here because it's just more portable, more slim. And in the long run, it does make a difference if you're carrying around for 8 hours a day. Nowadays, because I don't travel as much, I'd probably go for this one. Some people don't care, right? They're just I want more performance. Then you get this one here. If you want more slim, you get this one, right? They're both going to perform very well. 5070 Ti is a 5070 Ti. Even with the lower watts of this, it's still going to perform very well Obviously, when you unleash this one here, it has more chops to it. They both run very well under, balance modes and silent modes as well. Excellent performance. The CPU performance is crazy good. The only real negative, I would say, this one here does have that 240 hertz lock on the screen. It's a little weird. It's a little negative in terms of, you're going to hurt your battery life because you have a 240 hertz lock, but it still has decent battery life. It's not the biggest battery. So this one is not a battery king by any means because you have a slightly smaller battery and you're locked to that 240 hertz. But I'm going to tell you, it still performs very well. You're still going to get good battery life, 4 to 6 hours of like real world use. And then you can just hook it up to the USB-C. Like, it's not the end of the world. Just plug it into the USB-C if you're on the go. So that's something to be considerate of, but it's definitely lighter. If you're, you want extra battery life, this one, it's the same thing, but with a bigger battery, and you can slap that, that refresh down a little bit there, so you're going to get a little bit better battery life. But neither of them are like, there was like shock and alarm at the battery life on these laptops. People were like, oh my God, you get like 2 hours battery or 1 hour's battery. And it's like, no, you don't. I feel like a lot of people don't test batteries properly, unfortunately. Some YouTubers and that as well, they don't sleep the graphics properly. And so what happens is they're like, they're getting horrible battery life, but it's not because the laptop has bad battery, it's because the laptop GPU is not sleeping properly. I think one thing that you guys need to be aware of is that, not everyone is doing tests properly, right? So if you look at the battery life of these laptops here and, you say, okay, it's going to be like 1 hour or 2 hours, that should raise alarms. That should raise alarms. You may be like, okay, why? This is like a modern 2025 laptop, with 3 nanometer processing on the CPU. The GPU should sleep properly. So why is that person getting 1 or 2 hours of battery life? It should not be doing that. There's probably something wrong with either the laptop early launch, maybe there was a BIOS issue, or more likely there was a testing issue. A lot of people don't debloat the systems. They have things running. The GPU is not sleeping properly. And when the GPU doesn't sleep properly, you burn 20 to 30 watts on the GPU. So your battery life becomes trash. With my testing method, I can really show you that the GPU is sleeping at the time of the testing. Therefore, I can say, what's drawing power here is, the CPU and the other components. The GPU is not randomly pulling power. So this one actually has okay battery life. It's not good, but it's not bad either. It's just like, all right, I guess, but it's a super slim laptop. The other one has good battery life, I would say, quite good. So either one, they're both really nice laptops. They're really impressed me. I'm going to have a lot more game testing. I'm going to spend the rest of the night probably I've already tested hours, but I'll record game testing on this one. I'll record game testing on the big one and, follow up for those videos because I don't want to do too much in this video to show them, but I can tell you I've already tested tons of games. Been using these for like a month. The game performance is excellent. It's very good. It's exactly what you'd expect, extrapolated up from what we've shown today. But I'm going to test a bunch of your favorite games and show you what this thing is like. So there you go. Those are the two laptops here. They're both excellent. Honestly, they are so far ahead of my expectations. There was so much doom and gloom of these laptops online. It was crazy. They were just like, it was like doomer scenario. People were like, it's garbage, it's terrible, the worst laptops ever. And then I bought them and I was like, what are these people talking about? These are nice ass laptops. Like, I'm going to be honest, the Acer Neo here on the left, this one, is nicer than the Legion 5 Pro. It just is. Right? Like, the Legion has the OLED if you want that. I don't want the OLED. So for me, this is just a better laptop. I would take this over the Legion 5 Pro any day of the week. The 7, maybe not, because the 7 has a vapor chamber, blah, 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 better speakers and that kind of stuff. But this one beats out the 5 Pro in my opinion, or Pro 5. It just does. This one, it's not really in the same category, so it's hard to compare. But this versus like a G16, yeah, the G16 will have better audio, but this one has better performance than a G16, and it doesn't have that annoying ass fan noise that the G16 has. The G16 with the 5070 Ti does come with a vapor chamber, so it's a lot better than the base one, but it still has pretty annoying fans. So it'd be toss-up. It'd be a toss-up between those two. And this is a way cheaper laptop than a G16 Zephyrus. These are honest to goodness considerations you should buy. If you can find these for a good price, especially in this shitty market, consider it, because these are very nice laptops. Very nice. So check them out, pick the one you want, and pick them up.